back to another episode of the Moz House podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Begun, and I'm here with one of our current exhibiting artists, Pauline Leilani Badamo. And how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Hunter?
I'm also very good. Nice Sunday in August recording this.
Yep.
So it's been this podcast has been kind of a long time coming.
Mm-hmm.
Finally able to get together on, although it's not in person.
Right.
To me, it does almost feel in person. It feels, because it's basically the same. We're just talking.
Right.
And there's no video on these podcasts, so it's always nice. Yeah, why don't you tell everyone a little about yourself, about your art, about what you do?
Sure. Well, my name is Pauline Leilani Badamo. I am a metal artist and a sculptor. I work with various different mediums as well, so sort of interdisciplinary. And a lot of my work has to do with my culture and kind of sharing stories and history and culture and current issues within the Indigenous community, the Hawaiian Indigenous community, and kind of, I guess, infusing my own personal life experiences into that. So, yeah, it's been really wonderful adventure so far, and I think I've only really more seriously gotten into my art, I guess, a few years ago, and it's been great to explore different mediums as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. I have a quick question for you. It's kind of, we're probably going to edit this out, but I just remembered, was this current thing, the sculpture, sponsored?
Yes. So Oho
Yes.
Kukalani is my first mixed medium, or not my first, but my first time working with glass and metal together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I received a grant from the Huntington Arts Council. It was a regrant program through the state of New York, the Art Council through the state of New York. So I was really very excited to be able to get the grant to allow me to create this new artwork.
Yes. Thank you to the Huntington Arts Council for making this episode possible.
Yes.
The sculpture is really awesome. If anyone is in the area, Long Island, definitely come by Moz House to see it. There are some pictures online, but there will be more. I have making a video about the opening and everything.
Oh, wonderful.
Hopefully comes out this week. You never know with computers, but
awesome.
Things take a while.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get into like the world of metalworking, and how did this start really?
Yeah. So, I like to say it was a very happy accident that I got into construction and welding. I was actually in the food industry for about 5 to 6 years, both in Boston and then in New York when I moved back in, I guess, 2013. I was laid off from a job, and so looking for employment, and I saw a flyer for the sheet. I ended up doing a pre-apprenticeship program in Manhattan for women to get into the trades, and I found a job on Long Island working for a fencing contractor. So I started doing structural welding, and I was a fabrication welder for a few years, and I'd always loved creating and making art, but I think I started exploring metals to make jewelry, and then the creative ideas kind of kept coming, and I wanted to work in larger scales, and it kind of was just a really natural evolution there. But I've always had like these visions and dreams. Like a lot of my sculptures come from dreams that I've had, actually, and so it's been really special to bring these images and visions like into the real world and share them with people. Yeah.
Very cool. Speaking of dreams, so I sometimes have my dreams are so crazy that I have to write them down the next day.
Right.
And I think they're giving me like they're very episodic, and they each have their own thing. And sometimes they continue off from where we left off, but eventually my plan is to have them animated, like storyboard it, and then get someone to animate it, turn it into like shorts.
That's
like
wonderful.
10-minute shorts. So it's very interesting that you also draw some inspiration, especially from sculptures, from dreams.
Yeah.
So from my one of my questions I wanted to ask was, I know you seem to be, from the small details I could find, it seems you do enjoy playing video games. And
Yes.
I got this from a deep dive on your Instagram page, which I've started doing.
Mm-hmm.
You have so many Instagram posts. It took me like 5 minutes to scroll to the bottom. So that was fun. But I saw you mention The Legend of Zelda.
Yes.
Great game.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever draw inspiration from video games in that type of medium?
I'm not sure if I do. I definitely played video games growing up, and enjoyed that, and I think appreciated art in that form, that digital form, for sure. It's interesting, in school, I remember taking an art class called Computer Arts, and it was my first exposure to digital art, and I remember just really hating it. Like, I was always drawing and painting and everything by hand, so this concept of like attempting to make art through a computer or machine was very frustrating to me. I'm not so sure. I don't think that my art is really influenced by video games. I wouldn't say that, but I do appreciate the art that is made in video games, and it's so amazing now with the technology that we have, and the way things are so realistic. Yeah.
They are. For me personally, I don't make art like you make something like metal and you kind of turn into something amazing. For me, my art is done on the computer. Right. And I have to just it feels like I'm making something from I get footage and then whatever, but I play a lot of games with my friends because we were discussing them before the podcast.
Right.
But a lot of my friends live kind of far away. So we'll play games together. And the most creative I feel is after compounding all the clips we get from like a night of games and like editing them together and making them funny and then putting them online for my friends to see. So that's how I'm inspired by video games. I guess it's kind of just like a hub for my creativity to come out.
Sure.
After the fact of playing it.
I can see that, yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
That is
okay, cool. So another question I have is how did you end up getting something shown at Ma's house? I think your relationship with Jeremy started back for Outcropping, but I could be mistaken.
So I around, I guess maybe a few months before I even came across Jeremy's page on Instagram, or like the open call for Outcropping, I was wanting to, exhibit work. I had this one vision for a while that was coming up in my dreams and just my thoughts. And so then I saw the opportunity, I think from Jeremy's page on Instagram, for, the open call. Yeah. And so that's how I got connected with Jeremy and Ma's house, from being one of the exhibiting artists at Outcropping at Southampton Arts Center. And then, so when I was able to get the grant through the Regrant Program through New York State Council of the Arts and Huntington Arts Council, I felt like it would be a really great fit. I thought it'd be really special to show Indigenous, inspired artwork on the Shinnecock Reservation and at Ma's house, because it's such an amazing center for art. So I reached out to Jeremy, and they were really receptive, which was great. And yeah, so I'm really honored to share it there. And there's so many, actually, with one of my previous works, Kuleana, that was kind of really about the similarities between Indigenous communities and a lot of the issues that many Indigenous communities are facing currently, which is land sovereignty, food and cultural sovereignty. And it was kind of a conversation about how there's those connections, and just human connection in general. So
I actually I was looking into that piece of work, and I didn't know at the time when I first saw it that it was like the connection between our backgrounds, really.
Yes.
But once I discovered it, it definitely made me love it even more. And I want to see, Jeremy has quite the eye for talent. It's pretty amazing how every artist he ever brings in is so good.
Yes.
At what they do.
Yes.
So, speaking of, I think it was that piece. and it was on display. I want to talk about the one that was, I guess, stolen from the display case. Did
Yes.
you ever find it?
No, it was never found. Unfortunately, I did reach out to the police in the town in Patchogue, and it was never recovered. Um, but yeah, so it was kind of like I took it as sort of a learning moment in a way, although I was very saddened by the whole situation that, you know, nothing is permanent, and it's, yeah, sometimes it's okay to not get attached to things, and that's, I kind of try to put that into my mind.
It is so insane that someone would take a piece of art like that. I couldn't believe it.
Right.
How
Yeah.
do they even get it? Like, I understood how they like lifted it up, but you need like, it's like an organized heist. Like, they needed more than one person.
Right.
Needed a van. It's gigantic.
Right.
And then they went somewhere that you wouldn't be able to find, like any scrapyards you would be able to find or anything.
Right.
It's craziness.
Yeah, I imagine that whoever took it probably cut it into pieces, and then, because to turn in a whole thing like that to a scrapyard, that would be kind of obvious,
Yeah.
And I guess I think really what was so, I don't know, unfortunate too is that me having a background in metals and all of that, from I stole it, the price of copper was up. However, the most of the weight from that sculpture was from the rebar, the steel rebar, and I don't think they got very much for it,
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine maybe someone was, in a way, I was like, okay, I have to move forward. There was nothing else for me to do.
Yeah, still unbelievable to me that happened.
Right.
My mom, I think, I'm not sure if you guys have met, but she is aware of what happened and is a fan of your work.
Oh,
And she's actually been like keeping her eyes out for it. Like,
really?
everywhere she's been looking for it too.
Really?
I think a lot of people have actually been looking for it without like saying anything about it, but they are
Right.
People keep their eyes out because they're,
Oh,
especially people on Shinnecock, because they're so upset. They're like, this great piece of art just got taken, but
yeah,
I think it was.
I was really hoping, I think in the beginning, I was really hoping like, oh, someone just took it as a prank, or, I don't know what. And then as time passed, and I think the police kind of, looked around a bit and stuff, and it just never turned up. So I don't know. It would be, sometimes I think, oh, does someone still have it somewhere? Is it like sitting in someone's yard or something? But yeah, I don't think that's the case, unfortunately.
I truly hope it is, and like one day someone just turns up.
That would be pretty incredible, actually. I would,
Yeah.
I would love to, if it is out there, I would certainly love to get it back, because I had part of the story of that artwork was also about the canoe and the importance of, in Olelo, Hawaii, it's called the va'a, or the canoe. And so part of that too was how the canoe connects indigenous cultures, specifically, like the Shinnecock and the Hawaiian culture. And so I had plans for the sculpture to travel. And so I was like in the process of contacting some other art institutions like around Maryland and stuff, and different sculpture parks. And I kind of really wanted that to be like a traveling art piece. Yeah.
Still, I really hope it shows up, but
Yes.
doesn't look likely at this point.
Right.
Maybe one day.
Maybe.
So, on a much lighter note, are there any new art mediums that you're interested in getting into?
Yes. So one of the really wonderful things of parts of receiving the grant was my ability to explore a new medium, which was glass. And I was able to take 3 different lessons and fabrication sessions at Urban Glass in Brooklyn. And I've really fallen in love with the medium. So I'm really excited to explore glass more. And now, actually, I recently moved to Hawaii. So I live in Pahoa, Hawaii. And there's a lot of woodworkers out here. And I've sort of made some connections recently with people that are in the lumber industry and woodworking, carpentry. So I'm hoping to also, I'd like to start doing some wood carving and sort of bring together glass, metal.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually I would call myself a fan of like glass working, glass blowing.
Mhm.
I've always wanted to try it. And actually, my favorite piece of art that I own personally is I got it in Philadelphia, and it is
Mhm.
a piece of blown glass jewelry with
Mhm.
this crazy design on the inside. Wondering, are you going to be focusing on like jewelry, on like or bigger things people use every day, or just art installations with the
Yeah,
glass?
I actually I have some ideas. It really did come from having the opportunity to like work in the hot shop with I work
Mm.
with this amazing glass artist and instructor Esteban Salazar from Urban Glass. He's been doing this almost 3 decades now. Um, so he was able to teach me a lot about the tools and just like all the specific technical information about like knowing when to take the glass in and out of the furnace and how to sort of work with the medium. But I have some really interesting ideas and creative um, kind of brainstorming that's been happening since that. And I think I kind of want to stay within the realm of sculpture. And I've also thought about furniture as well. Like furniture making is something I've always wanted to do. Um, and I think because there's so much you can do with glass, and then like you combine that with metal and wood. I've also thought about lighting design is very interesting to me. That's always something I kind of like to see what people are making. Um, so yeah, I think there's like a lot of different avenues, but I certainly have some ideas in mind for some like upcoming sculptures, which would combine all three mediums.
I am also very. I also really like a nice glass top. What's it called? Not a desk, table. I don't know how I forgot the word
Right.
for table,
Yep.
but
Yep.
I grew up with those, and I was my dad actually one very funny story. I'll just tell real quick. When I
Sure.
was like 6 years old, my dad was my sister had just been born, so my
Mm-hmm.
dad was at home a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we were like going to watch something on the VHS tape or whatever,
Yeah.
and somehow it was like very high up, so he had to like kind of stand on his tippy toes to put it in,
Mm-hmm.
and so he did, and then he fell back right through our glass table,
Oh
completely unharmed.
no.
He was completely fine,
Yeah.
but that's just I think that kind of started me liking glass tables. I was like, oh
Sure.
my god, this could happen.
Right.
And then I always kind of had an appreciation
Mm-hmm.
for that. Yeah, so that's my funny glass table story.
Yeah. No, I think
Um,
I remember like the first lesson I had with Esteban, we pulled this long string of glass and then he cut it all up. It was like very thin, telling me like the history of glass and how it evolved from ancient Egypt to Mesopotamia and like, throughout history. So it's yeah, it's a really wonderful, interesting medium and I'm just like I feel like a little kid again. I think anytime
mhm.
I start with a new or different medium or even like a technique in art, right? Or just, want to check something out that's new. I always feel like I'm back in kindergarten and I get really excited. And then it's wonderful because then I have not only like, I think working with different mediums is always really great for artists because it's, that skill, gaining a new skill, of course, but also just that having like a sense of play. Like I think a lot of times when I don't know, I feel this way, but I don't know if other artists feel this way, but when you're creating art, sometimes you're thinking too much of the end, like product or like the end. I don't know. It's too like you can put yourself in a position where you're too like self-critical. And I think
Mhm.
play and exploration is really important, as to keep that kind of energy going where you can just explore and have fun with a medium and kind of just see where it takes you. So I feel like I have a lot of that energy around glass right now, which is great.
That's awesome. I
Hmm.
wish I could feel like that more often when I'm doing my art. When I'm
Hmm.
doing other different types of mediums that
Right.
isn't mine, I do feel like that, especially with like painting,
Right.
because I feel so bad at painting. Well,
Mm.
because I am bad at painting, but
Mm.
by the end, I'd usually really enjoy what I've made, and at
Right.
least the process of doing it
Right.
was very fun for me. So I feel like
Exactly.
that's what matters. And
Yeah.
then and then the piece of art always comes worth too much, so then I never want to sell it or anything.
Right.
Not that I
Yeah.
have sold anything, but there
Hmm.
was a time where Jeremy was like, "Okay, Hunter, we're gonna put this piece of I made like a Maz House graffiti art on a piece on paper."
Cool.
And Jeremy's like, okay, we'll put this up. And he's like, how much you want to sell it for if someone wants it? And I was like, $10,000, please. And no, there's no way in hell someone's going to buy my piece of paper for $10,000.
But people have. That's the interesting part. Like, you know, like throughout history,
sure.
right? Like artists, I remember going, I don't know if it was a Met or MoMA, one of the New York museums. And there was like the sketches, like Picasso or Van Gogh's sketches, just from their sketchbook. And like that obviously would go for auction for like so much money. But these are just studies that they were doing. They weren't like intentional finished art pieces, right? So that's a whole other thing. Like who's to say what value art has? Like who's, you know, that's a whole other thing you can like really dive into. But and I even, you know, when COVID hit, right, I had a full-time job, I have a daughter, and so I was like working and homeschooling, and I just got very burnt out. It was like way too much, you know? So I ended up taking a leave of absence from my job, and that's actually kind of how my Pono Aina, my art business, kind of started flourishing, because I started doing art markets and, you know, making art to sell to people. And it was really hard to kind of figure out, okay, pricing, and how do you determine, like, as an artist, as a creator, as a maker of things, how do you determine like what the value of something is, right? You know, and that's so, you know, so subjective. Everyone has different ideas. So like, you know, I could make a piece of glass art that took me 5 or 6 hours, but because we live in this world where you can order things that are mass produced and from other places, you know, that are going to be much lower cost, you know, it's kind of, it makes it hard in a way, right? Like that's, I don't know, that's just like a reality of being an artist or a creator, I guess, you know?
It is very hard to figure out how much you want to charge people.
Right.
Or even just when you are trying to sell something you've already made and figure out what should I price this at. Definitely for me. My prices are always for like recording other people are always fluctuating. I never really know what to charge. And then I charge like, oh, what do they want? Really? Can I even do that? I mean, I have to learn. So I do charge. If I have to learn how to do something for somebody, then I will charge more.
Right.
But if I already know how to do it, then I usually charge less, because that's like adds an extra hour or two to my process.
Correct.
Speaking of processes, could you run us through a process of making, I guess your process of making the current sculpture that is on display at Mouse House?
Sure. Yeah. So the sculpture is aluminum and glass. And so at Urban Glass, I worked with Esteban Salazar, and that was the first 2 classes were really me learning the tools to work with the medium. But glass working, I would say, is pretty similar to blacksmithing, which I've done also. And so you're working in a furnace, you remove the material, and with glass, you have to always rotate the glass on the tool, the punty, it's called. And so you're taking the glass in and out of the punty, and then you're using these tools that are handheld tools made of metal. Some of them are cork. It depends on what you're doing, to shape and push the material. So you're pushing this glass, you know, into the way that you want it to be. We did hot sculpting. So what I did to create the child in the sculpture, Ho'oho Kukulani, that was done with a solid piece of glass. Actually, it's not glass blowing, it's solid. It's called hot sculpting. And then for the metal portion, I'm really fortunate to have wonderful artist friends and people in my community. So a friend of mine owns a design company, and he does a lot of work, a lot of visual merchandising, excuse me. So he helped me cut with a CNC machine, cut out the aluminum shape for Ho'oho Kukulani, and then I welded all the parts together for that. So just using a electric, welding machine, and yeah, that's pretty much the process. So heat and electricity.
Sounds very difficult, honestly.
Yeah.
Lots of moving parts. So now you brought up blacksmithing. I've always been very interested in blacksmithing. Personally, I always kind of just felt like, oh, it'd be so cool to work with these metals. But for some reason, when I really think about it, I am more like, I just want to take the metal and melt it down And I'm just
Right.
wondering if you do like any like smelting. Like, do you have like one of those at home smelting things where you just take metal and like make it
Right.
into like a metal bar
Liquid.
or something? Yeah.
Right. So it's still in New York. Unfortunately, I was able to only like bring limited things with me initially. I'm planning to my cat is still in New York. So, and then I have the artist talk. So I do have a friend gifted me. His father was a jeweler, and a friend of mine gifted me a melter. Yeah, metal melter. Still to this day, I haven't had a chance to use it. But actually, I would love to I have never done metal casting, but it's something I would like to learn. And you can actually work with different types of sands. So you get like sand, you make a form like a box, and I've just watched videos on it. So you fill the box with the sand, but the sand's embedded with some type of oil. It's a specialty oil. And then you would melt the metal. You would create the shape that you want into the sand, and then you pour the metal into that sand, and it makes, a solid piece. So I guess it's considered an additive process when you're doing metal casting. There's so many different ways for like mold making and all of that, but it's something I would like to get into. I understand it's quite pricey though if you're doing say someone commissions a sculpture and then you're gonna pay a foundry to fabricate it for you. I think it's quite expensive. So part of the hindrance of like doing that on a larger scale would be the cost of production. But there's a lot that you can do on your own. Like, to be honest, when I've done most of little small blacksmithing for jewelry work, I just use fire bricks, and I have a handheld map gas torch, and I would have it on top of a plate of metal, and then I have anvils on stumps. I was very fortunate to have like a home studio when I was in New York. So you actually can do quite a lot with like very basic tools. And I feel like I always try to tell people and share about that process of how I do certain things, just so that people are aware. Like, if you want to get into blacksmithing, you can just get a hammer, hand torch. And honestly, if you had some rocks nearby, you could, just get like the basic essence of it, but you can actually do a lot with some basic tools.
There is this, I wonder if we watch the same guy on YouTube. I used to watch him a lot more than I do now, but it was just, he would like get scrap metal.
Mm-hmm.
He had this giant pot, I'd call it.
Okay.
You can buy them for a couple hundred. I think they're like $1,000.
Okay.
But then he just put them all in there, and I think his biggest expense is like propane, because there's a ton of propane.
Right.
And then he would just like make coins. Like, he
Right.
would just turn wire into coins or like bricks. And that's something when I get my own house,
Yep.
I would like to just use the garage. Be like, okay, here's my garage, and it's
Yep.
just like metal everywhere,
Yep.
and me just like smelting every once in a while.
Yes.
But luckily, since it's not too hot in New York, they'll probably be doing the wintertime activity, because I don't want
Right.
to. I want the door to be able to be open and not too hot.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward to that.
And I'm a member. I don't know if I probably am expired, but I want to say the membership is like, $40 or something for the year. In general, it's a really wonderful community, and that's how I initially got into it, because I went upstate New York to this place called Ashokan, and
wait, Ashokan?
Yeah, Ashokan. So
I've been there actually.
Oh, you have been?
Crazy. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think, from what I understand, that space like hosts different conventions and events and stuff. But it's usually around April, I want to say, is the hammer-in. They do a fall and a spring. So I went. That's how I initially got into blacksmithing, and I learned how to, keep the fire going on a coal forge actually. And then it was just a weekend of like introduction to blacksmithing and how to run a coal forge and about forges. And then they usually have it's a really wonderful organization. And then they have blacksmiths that will come from all over the United States. I think they typically try to find, blacksmiths in the Northeast region, but then they will come and do a demonstration. And I was really thrilled to see, his name is Peter. I want to say, I don't want to butcher his last name, but his last name is with a B. I want to say it's Braxnix. I don't want to do his name justice, but this blacksmith by the name of Peter, I think he lives out in the Midwest. He's a phenomenal artist and blacksmith. Really cool, humble guy, and he did a demo there, and I got to learn about forge welding, which is pretty cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful organization, and there's also I got to meet blacksmiths from New Jersey, from Connecticut, so I kind of made friends with some people, and it's just a wonderful community of like human beings that love to create and share information, and it's just a really welcoming community.
It is so crazy to me that that was where you kind of first started your blacksmithing journey. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I was in 5th grade, my
Mm-hmm.
class took a trip down there for like 3 days,
Oh,
and
did
one of the
they?
things we did blacksmithing, and you just
Mm-hmm.
like reminded me. I haven't heard that name in so many years,
Right.
but when first we did blacksmithing, I actually made a fire pick, and it was like
Awesome.
my greatest creation ever.
Yeah.
I was like, this is awesome. I could do that. And I think
Yeah.
that might have been what kind of started me actually being interested, but I just couldn't remember it.
Right.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for jogging my memory.
Of
I haven't heard
course.
that in so long.
Yeah, happy to. It's the type of thing that you don't forget,
Yeah.
And I think opportunities like that are so important, and also like to share for artists that the blacksmiths, everything's so open and about like learning and sharing, which I think is really wonderful. So, yeah.
It is. I really appreciate the time we live in, because you can find someone to teach you almost anything, or people teaching
Exactly.
anything you want to learn,
Mm-hmm.
when you don't necessarily have to go to a school or anything to do it. People
Correct,
are
yeah.
always giving out workshops and stuff
Yep.
to get you started.
Yep.
And the shameless plug in Ma's house. Yes, we do workshops for other art all the time.
Yes.
So come on by.
Wonderful workshops at Ma's house. It's like, oh, I want to get out there.
I wish we had like the space to where we and the money to have like a glass room or all the stuff you need to do that, and then you could come and do a workshop.
Yo, I would,
glass.
which were great, but I don't know if that's something. I think I'd need to like do more learning
more.
myself to teach it. The blacksmithing, that would be, or coppersmithing is definitely. I've taught it.
Oh, I would love for that to happen too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think I would love to try to make that happen at some point. That's something I definitely love to talk more about. Yeah.
The one thing is amazing that for Emma, I mean, this is another kind of plug, but when the artists come down that aren't in like my aunt Denise, or we get like lots of guest artists to come and artists in residence, and they have to like do a workshop.
Yes.
And we always get so many people I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
They're like they're first timers at Ma's house because they are so interested in learning how to do this art that this artist is teaching them.
Right.
And then I get to also learn, which is great. So I
Yeah.
just learned to do wood. Learned is
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm not very good at it. I'd even say it was bad. But I learned how to do some wood carving, and I had so much fun, and I was like, wow, this is awesome.
That's
and some
wonderful.
people were really good at it, and it was their
Right.
first time.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what you're good at until you try it. So get
Yeah,
out there and
that's
learn stuff,
true.
people.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's always great to like explore new things, because not only do you learn something, but then you have this wonderful experience of like building community, meeting other people that like to do what you like to do,
I agree. So this is kind of a random question, but
Mm-hmm.
are you a fan of Star Wars?
I am, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so in my research, I saw this is kind of like the precursor to my next question.
Sure.
But that you had made a custom General Grievous mask.
It was a full, yeah. No, the mask was actually purchased. The sculpture I made, it was a life-size. That was my first life-size sculpture.
Wow.
I made that in 2018. No, 2019. Or was it 22? I'm like, because of COVID, my sense of like years of things that happened, like things kind of pre-COVID, or kind of, it's like, oh, which year was it? I think it was 2019 that I made that. Yeah. And it was so interesting, because that commission like literally came out of the fact that I usually would go to this one mechanic to fix my car, but that mechanic was like overbooked. So I went to this other mechanic for like an oil change and to check something else out. And he was a massive, when I say massive star, like everything in the front office of this mechanic shop was Star Wars.
That's
And
crazy.
so we got into this conversation about Star Wars. I'm like, this is really cool, like blah, blah. And then he saw this sticker I had in my car from the Boilermakers Union. And he was like, oh, like, are you with them and whatever? So we got into the fact that I weld, and he was like, oh my goodness, could you build me this? And I was like, you really, are you serious? And he was like, yes, like, how much do you want, you know? And so that was my first commission of like a large scale sculpture. And it was so fun to build. I worked on it for 6 months, and it was nice because I had plenty of time to kind of think about how to build things. I didn't really I had a general figurine to work off, actually, like the kids like toy figurine. So I kind of studied that, and then I ended up watching a bunch of the movies to kind of like get the character, get the sense of the character. So that was a fun build because it was just like a really cool character. This guy, the person I made it for, was like so enthusiastic. And then to finally show him the finished work and to have this person be so like over the moon happy, it was just like such a good feeling,
Yeah, I wish I had that giant life-size General Grievous sculpture now.
Yeah.
For my own. I hope he has it on display somewhere. Like in his office, people can come and see it.
I think actually like lives in his backyard.
Oh my god, that's a good place for it.
I found out later on that his wife was not too happy that he spent like a bunch of money on this thing. But yeah. So
I bet she was not.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's probably accepted the fact of that his like serious fandom of Star Wars, which is cool. I think it's so cool when people, I feel like I'm a science nerd, and that's why I love welding so much. And I think why I like creating so much, because I'm just a curious person. And so I love when I meet people that are so enthusiastic about something, because you can see their love for it, and you can also like, it's just that excited kind of energy. So it was really gratifying to like show him the finished piece, and he like totally loved it. And it was really, I also was like able to gain confidence in my ability to build something that large, and I built I started with a template. Like typically when I do anything, like life size and whatever, I start with a drawing. So I work on paper first, and then I put everything into cardboard. Because cardboard's like you can do so much with cardboard as like a structural medium. And it's really strong too. Like people have made furniture out of cardboard. But yeah, so that's kind of a lot of my process too, is like when I'm making a larger piece like that, I'll do paper to cardboard and then to metal, because a lot of times metal is, it's an expensive medium. So is glasses as well,
I am currently I just realized I'm also wearing a Star Wars Darth Vader shirt.
Oh, there you go.
Yes,
Nice.
I'm also a big fan. I actually just went to Spain with my dad.
Nice.
And when I was there, it was so hot. It was like 100-something degrees. And we were on this long walk, and I was like, oh God, I'm like sweating.
Yeah.
They want to go to like all these places that I usually do want to see stuff. I was like, I don't care about this place in particular we're going to.
Right.
But then, so they're like, oh, where do you want to go? And I just look up like things over here, and I see it's actually from the movies that General Grievous is in. Okay. The girl that marries Anakin Skywalker. Yep. The queen. Her palace is in Spain. Like,
oh, no way.
Yeah, it was like 4 minutes from where I was standing. I was like, what? So I went in there. I like ran. I felt like giddy with joy. My family was like, oh, look, he's running around like a kid. I'm like 25. Right. Half the people there definitely do not know. I would say there's a ton of people. And these people are all there because this beautiful palace, like esque place. Right. And there's like concerts there and all this great stuff. Very but I was just like, this is where Anakin Skywalker found his wife used to live. Yeah. This is awesome.
That's cool. So what part of Spain was that?
That was Seville, okay. Spain. Yes.
Very cool.
It's very nice there. Very, very hot though. But it's like dry. People. I always thought it was bullshit. It's like, oh, the dry heat. It's better than the warm heat.
No.
But yeah, I came back from Spain, and it was like 86 degrees in New York, and it was hotter because it just rained, and I was like, what is happening? Right. I felt like I was getting like choked out by the air.
Yeah, humidity is really intense.
So people are not lying when they say the dry heat, but I don't know. 110 degrees versus 86 should not feel similar.
Right,
in my head. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, yeah, things are certainly changing with the climate, so it's very real.
Yeah, I was like, why am I feeling so hot? This is
Mm-hmm.
insane.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is like, and I do sweat a lot. Me and my dad both, we were just blessed with the, we sweat a lot gene, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like,
Right.
what is happening to me?
Yeah. I think
And
that's
then
the worst feeling, is that like where you're just sweating and you can't, there's nothing you can do about it.
there'd be like sprinklers when you go past restaurants. I'd be like trying to put my head out to get it. But I was like talking to my friend, and he's like, yep, this is the hottest month like on record ever. And I was like, oh my
Wow.
God, no wonder I'm dying over here.
Right.
Yeah. Was that July? Yeah, July was probably
it really was.
Ever.
It was pretty intense. I remember, I think back in, I want to say like 2010, I remember there were also like I was in Massachusetts farming that summer, and I remember the 3 days where it hit like 102 or something. It was wild. But there's definitely, I feel like we're going to see more frequent heat. What is it called when it's like a heat wave? Yeah.
Yeah, heat waves.
Yeah.
What kind of farming were you doing?
In college. And so I was growing vegetables over the summer. And it was part of a course I took, actually. So it was a 2-semester course. And then it was like theory, installing all the equipment, driving the tractors, harvesting, weeding. But it was all organic, so we didn't use any pesticides or anything. And then when we sold the vegetables actually were purchased by a vegan restaurant on campus that was also run by students. So it was just really cool, because it was this really wonderful closed loop system of students growing food, students eating the food, and the class is it's very popular today. And I think, from what I understand, the student farm sells vegetables to the local grocery stores as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
What school did you go to?
UMass Amherst.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I know that school.
Yeah, I think they started as an agricultural college, and then it expanded, to the other schools and became the university. So, yeah, it was such a wonderful experience to be there.
If you're ever interested in kelp farming, I know people, aka my mom, who is one of the Shinnecock kelp farmers.
Yes,
that would be happy for volunteers if you ever want to like try your hand at that type of stuff. Or
yeah, I would love to. I had volunteered once. When was it? I had volunteered once with, I think it was your mom and Waban, and Matt was out that day too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, I'd been wanting to help with, I think they just recently did a big harvest.
They did, yes.
Yeah.
It's almost time for them to go back out there. I think in like a week they have to start cultivating I forgot what they're called, but the little tiny pieces of kelp in the tanks.
Right, like the seedlings, yeah.
Yeah, the seedlings, yes.
Yeah. I would, ready. When I'm back in New York, I definitely want to come and visit. I'm so proud of what they're doing there, because it's so important for the water of that whole area of Long Island and the Sound. And, it's just...
Mm-hmm. It is a shame that the people on the front lines of like trying to stop climate change and pollution of the waters are just like my mom and her friends who are like, we need to do something about this, and have to go out on their own, rather than like these people with millions and billions of dollars that could, with a lot less effort, help change everything. Right. But yeah, also kelp farming in the water, being in the water trying to farm is, I've only done it like once or twice, and it was so difficult to do. Like, you're wearing all these gloves, trying not to get wet. Yeah. Chest high in water. Right. Tying knots. Can't see. It's like raining. Like, you guys do this every day? Yeah.
The day I had gone out, I think it wasn't fully high tide. I want to say, it was cold. The water is very cold because it's like winter, or maybe very early spring. I can't remember which month it was, but I remember, I think it was what Bon was saying. One day she was out recently, not too long ago, and there were like bluefish in the water, but like close to her, So that's also another thing of like doing any kind of like aquaculture farming work, is like you have to deal with other creatures in the water too, you know?
Yeah.
Besides like the actual, media around the work that they're doing, which is really important work,
Mm-hmm. One thing about the creatures in the water is that was something I was like, because now sharks are kind of just like hanging out anywhere they want to. Not necessarily they're going to go over there, but they have a bunch of other spots too.
Right.
And then there are definitely seals and stuff.
Right.
And so I was just like, well, I just can't think about it. Don't look around. Just focus on the kelp.
Yeah. I have heard that the sharks, I think in general, when the water gets warmer, as it has been because of, climate change and everything, that the sharks come closer to the shore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
It is strange. And kelp is known for being like habitat for stuff because they go over there and hang out.
Right.
And so like mussels and stuff, like I'm like fine with that. I'm like, okay, good. But then like things want to go in there, like crabs and stuff.
Right.
I'm like, why is there a crab in my hand right now?
Right. Yeah.
Just a little disturbing. But luckily, I'm not someone who's really afraid of the ocean. Like,
right.
I have a respect for the ocean that it could kill me anytime it wants.
Right.
But I will still go in. A lot of people do not want to do that.
Right.
We're currently training my dog to be able to go out in the water and like be on a canoe.
That's great.
Because that's like my mom's dream to have him help with the kelp.
Nice. How old is your dog?
He's brand new, like 18 weeks old.
Oh, puppy. Okay, very cool. Yeah.
His name is Sokka.
Nice. I feel like as early as you can get him used to the water, it's the best. Because then, I think also baby animals don't have a lot of fear most of the time to try new things. So
yeah. I got him a pool.
Oh, nice.
That every once in a while we'll bring him out there and just put him in the water so he's not afraid, splashing a little bit. And we bring him to the beach all the time.
Oh, good.
And we have him like go in the water. He was very afraid actually because the waves were actually really big that day.
Gotcha.
So I had to like pick him up and like walk into the waves so he could see that I don't die from getting touched by the water.
Right, like you're not afraid.
And then like I put him down where the water like kind of stopped, and then he'd like check it out.
Nice.
And get a little wet. And we had to give him baths all the time. Just get more used to water.
What breed is he?
It's a Cocker Spaniel.
Oh, okay, cute.
That is for some reason the only type of dog we ever get. But they're very cute and we like them. So
yeah, they are. Okay. Nice. Yeah, we miss our cat over here because so they're very strict, which makes sense about rabies here in Hawaii. And so there's a series of paperwork and visits and all this stuff to bring the cats over from anywhere else, from the mainland to Hawaii. And so we just maybe 2 days ago, we got the email that her test was good, so she could come over. But I think there's still, once they get the test results, there's still like a waiting period before I can go like bring her back here. So we're almost, I think we're halfway through the waiting period to bring her over, which is exciting.
Exciting. What's your cat's name?
Yeah, her name is Amelia.
Amelia?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I hope Amelia gets to go to Hawaii soon.
Yes, we miss her terribly.
Yeah. Rabies is also one of my worst. If there's anything on this earth I'm afraid of, it's rabies.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty serious. So I understand why they're very strict about the policies, It's important this is, I think, one of the places in the world that doesn't have any record at all, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's pretty amazing.
Right. So like that makes total sense as why they would be so protective about it or, concerned. Yeah.
When I was a child, my parents were watching something and they got it was like a doctor show. The guy had rabies and they had to take this giant needle and stab him through the chest with it.
No.
And they were like, this is the only way you can get rid of rabies. And you just have to get this shot if they even, because once the symptoms show up, you're dead basically. So you just have to get the shot early. And I was like, okay, I'm never even going to get into a situation where I might have to get rabies.
Right.
But then bats kept getting into the house. And so apparently bats are the only animal that can give you rabies without biting you.
Correct. Yes.
So I do not I'm fine with bats, but I don't want them in my house.
Right.
And it happened on 2 separate occasions that a bat got in. And if a bat gets in your house, you have to go and get the rabies shot. But really? I wasn't going to get a rabies shot. Yeah. If animal control comes to get it for you, you have to go get the rabies shot.
Okay.
So we caught it ourselves.
Oh,
and
wow.
Did not get rabies. One time my mom got this giant tube and caught it. And another time it was like torturing my mom and my sister flying around them. So I had to like hit it out the air with a lacrosse stick.
Oh, geez.
And then we caught it.
There you
with
go.
that and like put him outside.
Right. Wow.
But
Good thing
I was
you
very
had the
afraid for
lacrosse
rabies.
stick.
Yeah, it was my sister's. I just found it. I was
Wow.
actually downstairs playing video games with my friends. I was
Nice.
probably like 16, and I just heard screaming for
Mm-hmm.
way too long. And I'm like, oh, God, what's happening upstairs? And
Yep.
the dog was going crazy.
Oh, no.
So I went up there, and they're like hiding under the covers.
Oh,
They
geez.
had this blanket on the couch. They're both hiding under. I'm like,
Oh.
what's happening?
Yeah.
And they're like, it's a bat. It's a
Oh,
bat. So
yeah.
I grabbed a lacrosse stick and like ran around, and my dog kind of knew what it was all the whole time. They were chasing it around.
Right.
And then I somehow caught one of my proudest achievements was ever catching that bat with a lacrosse stick.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, we went on a huge tangent there, but
yeah, it's all good.
Happens every once in a while on the Moss House podcast. But I would like to ask you, what is the piece of art that you were most proud of that you've created?
That's a good question. I'd have to think about that for a minute. Actually, I think maybe the model, the plasticine model that I made for this most recent sculpture, and I say that just because the whole sculpture was a really like personal work for me, and so making the clay model was like extremely cathartic for me. And so yeah, I would say this most recent sculpture I think is maybe one of my proudest works, just because new medium, and also kind of have it come together in the time frame that it did. I was nervous for a minute there because I wasn't sure, like there were a lot of moving parts, and I was traveling to Brooklyn to take these classes. But this work was really personal for me because the story of Ho'oho Kukulani is about the goddess who has a child with Vakea, who's Father Sky, and the first child is like stillborn, and then from the child grows the taro plant. They have a second child, and then that second child, Haloa, is the first Kanaka Maoli. And I had suffered a miscarriage, and so this whole sculptural art piece was really like my way of healing. And so to make the clay model and then have it be translated into glass and part of the sculpture was really, very special to me.
This seems like an amazing piece of art.
Thank you.
Okay, so now that we're nearing the end, I like to ask my final 3 questions. I guess final 2.
Sure.
So, the first question is there anything that I should have asked you about that I didn't?
I'm not sure. That's a very good question. I don't think so. I think you've asked great questions.
Nice. That means I did my job properly, and Jeremy won't fire me. But okay, let's see. And then I also want to know, do you have any questions for me now that I've asked you 100 questions in the past hour?
Sure. I guess, what do you enjoy most about doing the podcast, and what's your favorite thing about making art?
Okay, my favorite thing about doing the podcast is I guess just talking to all the amazing artists. I learn a lot about them and their processes, and sometimes I pick up some stuff like, oh, maybe I should try doing that. And I also like talking to people and learning more about them. I would say that's my favorite part. And sometimes I make friends. Sometimes I keep in contact with them afterwards, and I feel like the podcast is a good way to wrap up someone's residency.
Sure.
And then you to have one final kind of a way for them to think about everything that they had done while they're here.
Right.
And yeah, that's enjoyable for me. And then favorite thing about making art, I guess there's 2 points in where I feel good when making art is the moment I get the inspiration for something to make something, which usually comes from either a song or a movie, or it could just be from me while I'm just like thinking. And then seeing, and now that I'm getting kind of good at art, my art at least, to where I enjoy the final product is
Mm-hmm.
when I like what I've made.
Right.
And then I want it to be funny, then I think it's funny, and I just can, especially if it's I can watch like 100 times and still enjoy it.
Right.
And those times, in the time before I put it out to the world, and I just have it for myself, that's something I've made, and I just really like it. That is my favorite part of creating and the process. But the end result for me is better because you don't really know what it's gonna. I just had to hope. I used to have problems with creating putting what's in my head out in reality.
Right.
And now that I can do that,
mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that I have cultivated the ability to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. All right, those are good questions. I like those ones.
Thank you.
So now that we are, I would say we're officially at the end of the podcast, I'd like to give you the opportunity to plug all your social media, your websites, anything you have coming up.
Sure.
The floor is yours.
Sure. So, well, first and foremost, I would love to thank Ma's House and Jeremy Dennis and Brianna Hernandez for all of their efforts and their hard work and the amazing work they're doing at Ma's House to create this community of artists. I'd like to thank you for doing this podcast with me. A shout out to the Huntington Arts Council and for the re-grant from the New York State Council of the Arts for the opportunity to help me explore a new medium and create this new work. I do have an artist talk September 10th, and that date potentially may change. I'm still trying to, as I settle into my new home here, trying to figure out a way if I'm going to be able to make it there in person or maybe change the date. So I would like to really make it in person. My Instagram is PBADAZ or PBadaz, and you can check out any new work I'll be creating in the coming months there. I don't have a website. That is something that I certainly have been wanting to work on for a while. I think sometimes, like, even something as basic as a website, it's like I'm not a programmer or really. I'm somewhat tech savvy, but I'm not a web developer in any means. So that's something I'd like to work on at some point. But for now, Instagram is the best way to kind of follow me and check that out. And yeah, there's nothing. I have no current like upcoming events or anything like that. But hopefully, as I kind of get acclimated to the arts community here in Hawaii, I would love to be, getting involved in the arts community here. Yeah, to show some work and just connect with other artists.
Well, you do have something on being shown at Ma's House currently, so if you're interested in seeing Pauline's work, come stop by. It's this great outdoor sculpture.
Yes.
And we have set up multiple bear traps around it, so no one even thinks about taking it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We didn't actually put any bear traps, but I do suggest we put them on the property sometimes.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. But it is in a nice spot. It looks great. And then you see like all the other parts of the show too. Great artists. Yes. And well, thank you for being on the podcast. I had a good time getting to know you. Hope to get to continue contact.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course, anytime. And yeah, thanks to everyone who listened. Thank you for making it. If you made it to the end, thank you even more. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode of Ma's House Podcast.